the insane, the obscure, the unsolved. Life sometimes takes turns we don't expect, and careless decisions may lead to grave consequences. His name was Clifton Lassiter. He was born in the year 1939 to a Bible-thumping North Carolina farmer and his wife. At a young age, Clifton fled from an oppressive South to a slightly more liberal Philadelphia. He became gainfully employed at the local shipyard for many years. In the summer of '73, he loaded up the family for a vacation at Grandma's house in North Carolina. It was a journey he would never complete. Fortunately, everyone in his family survived with injuries on a scale between mid-level to minor. Everyone, that is, except Clifton. Blinded and perhaps somewhat bitter about his new circumstances, Clifton fell back into some old familiar vices: women and booze. Needless to say, his wife was not amused, nor was she willing to tolerate her husband's sexcapades. After a physical altercation, Clifton took his share from the accident insurance and made his exit. Destination: Murfreesboro, North Carolina, the place where his story began, and soon enough, end. Clifton's father, the Southern Baptist preacher, a strict disciplinarian, had become old, frail. The bedridden old man was no longer a robust tower of authority, but instead just a fading shadow. Clifton, the old preacher's son, had been called many things: father, brother, husband, son, even friend, but one thing he had never been called was a choir boy. With the cat away, the mice did play, and one thing Clifton loved was being a player. What he didn't see, so to speak, is that he was playing with fire. Soon the old preacher's time came, and not long after that, his wife. Much to Clifton's surprise, the old preacher left the house not to Clifton, but to the youngest grandchild. Snubbed and evicted, Clifton was suddenly not only blind, but homeless. The year is now 1982. Clifton finds himself in a rundown trailer park on the wrong side of town. The place is a hodgepodge of miscreants, drunks, addicts, thieves, and various women of ill repute. The old blind man feels right at home. A few years would pass before a new woman would enter Clifton's life. Her name was Dorothy Porter. Dorothy, called Dot by those who knew her, and Clifton had two things in common. One, they both loved alcohol, and two, neither of them handled it very well. Perhaps it was the hooch. Perhaps it was Clifton's womanizing. Probably it was both. But violence was no stranger to Clifton's little tin castle, and neither were the police. Nobody saw a good outcome for these two: the love triangles, the liquor, the authorities. But not even the most clairvoyant crystal ball could predict the horror and tragedy on the horizon. Clifton, more often than not, was the instigator of the constant tussles, but because of her drunken, flamboyant, and often physically aggressive interactions with the law, Dot was usually the one jailed. The cycle of malice and belligerence was perpetual and almost evenly distributed between the two. The intercession of Dot's sons only added to the plethora of cigarettes, whiskey, bourbon, gin, and even good old backwoods moonshine that Clifton had begun to sell by the shot, created an atmosphere of mayhem and insidious discombobulation that you could almost taste. And Dot's second-born son, Burnett, loved to taste. He battled deep depression and loneliness, bewailing a parental lineage of alcohol and misfortune. He often expressed a lack of desire to live, and one dark night he got his wish. Dot was inconsolable. Burnett's surviving brother Raymond was more docile. Even though he drank, he never created any issue. But there was another brother. His name was Willie Porter, nicknamed Ricky. Ricky drank, and yes, he created issues. Although quiet when sober, even the smallest swig of alcohol would transform him into a raging maniac. The best thing about Ricky was that he was far away. Unfortunately, that was about to change, and for Clifton and Dot, things would never be the same. February the 6th, 1992. Clifton is returning to the trailer park in his 1977 Pontiac Grand Prix. It is a car he loves. Even though Clifton cannot drive himself, he buys a car to remind him of old times, and besides, there was no shortage of licensed drivers in the vicinity, especially females. That day's designated driver was one Miss Minnie Louise Fleetwood, locally known as Miss Louise. Clifton's third lady friend that day was named Daphne Boone. All were a tad intoxicated, and with the exception of Miss Louise, by the end of the day, all would be dead. Unbeknownst to the jovial lot, Clifton was about to receive one final guest, Willie Eric Porter. Ricky had been in Murfreesboro a while now. He's broke, busted, and disgusted about it. Feeling the pangs of withdrawal, a desperate Ricky decides to hit up his mother for cash. Dot, however, was in no mood to support nor entertain Ricky's habit. Besides, she had ones of her own. Ricky exploded in a fit of violence. Cursing his mother and the God that made him, he removes one of her shoes and proceeds to beat his own mother in the head viciously. The blasphemy, the profanity, the parental abuse. Fed up and appalled, Miss Louise makes her exit. She has no idea. She just saved her own life. Ricky's unchecked rage intensifies. After beating his mother with her own shoe, he proceeds to toss it outside. Clifton, being Clifton, ignores the transpiring events. Daphne, perhaps incapacitated by alcohol, is also out of the picture. At the moment it is a war between mother and son. That, however, will soon enough change. Everything will change. Dot, in a drunken tirade, demands Ricky to fetch her discarded shoe immediately. To her surprise, a compliant Ricky concedes to her wishes, only to beat her with the shoe yet again. Despite her son's persistently abusive efforts, Dot refuses to give up her moolah. An enraged Ricky takes out his frustration by kicking and punching Clifton's door. Far be it from Clifton to get in the way of a good woman beating, but his property damaged?
Hell no.
Clifton, now furious, grabs a kitchen knife and approaches the maniacal Ricky. Simultaneously, a groggy Daphne awakens in a whiskey-infused daze.
What's up?
Having lost a perfectly good high, Daphne immediately jumps to Clifton's defense. Ricky, being outnumbered, makes his exit with just these parting words.
I'll get all y'all.
Normal life, to coin a phrase, continued after Ricky's abrupt exit. But truth be told, the party was already over. The pen was lifted and the page was dry. No one knows the exact sequence of events that took place next, but somehow, from someone, somewhere, Ricky obtained some cash. Perchance he purchased some food, some whiskey, cigarettes even. But one thing he certainly purchased was gasoline. 1 hour later, Dale Hicks and Mr. Eugene Ely are taking a quick spin through the trailer park. It's something they've done many times before, but tonight is different. They see Ricky outside Clifton's home. He has a 5-gallon bucket of gasoline. Possibly car trouble? No one knows. But soon everyone will. A few minutes later, Dale and Eugene are exiting the trailer park. It's now clear Ricky's trouble wasn't with the engine. It's much, much worse than that. The night erupts in an insidious blaze. Ricky dashes away in his beat-up clunker. The once stagnant night evolves into one of screams and terror. As for Clifton's remaining guests, sadly, no one else exits, and neither does Clifton. All three perish. A disoriented Ricky somehow drives away from the exit instead of towards it. People gather and demand him to stop, first with their voice, then with stones. Being inspired inadvertently by the furious crowd, Ricky finds that exit after all. Back in the trailer park, the scene is increasingly grim. Clifton was a frugal man. He wasn't the ideal dad. He wasn't keen on church. And along with 2 others, he wasn't alive. Did he deserve what he got? The fire department said it was the hottest blaze they had ever witnessed. Willie Eric Porter ruined 4 lives that night, including his own. What type of man kills his own mother? In this case, it wasn't a sober man. Did the intoxicants create a monster, or was the monster always just beneath the surface? Tell me what you think in the comments. And the next time you're in a heated situation, remember, reflex reactions often lead to grave consequences.